joining me right now, columnist with the Fiscal Times and FoxNews.com, Liz Peek. Liz, good to see you. Okay, where to start? First of all, Chuck Schumer trying to say that this is not going to help the middle class. It's only going to help the wealthy. Let me just point something out here. The wealthy in New York, the state that Mr. Schumer hails from, will actually pay more under this plan. Yeah. Because the idea is you're not going to be able to get the state deduction or the local deduction anymore.
Look,
so
I agree.
What's going on?
Schumer had his talking points ready before the plan even came out, right? He was going to bash this as a handout to the wealthy and to big corporations, no matter what. Let's go back to the state and local tax deduction. If you look, it's kind of diabolical, honestly, because if you look at the top 10 places they could have gone for revenues, the top 10 biggest deductions, the only one that doesn't hurt workers and union employees or the real estate industry, which employs hundreds, millions of people across the United States, is the state and local tax deduction. And if you look at the top 10 states in terms of tax rate that their inhabitants pay, every single one voted for Hillary Clinton, except for Iowa. I don't know how Iowa got on that list, to be honest, but they're the only one. So it's a politically acceptable thing for Trump supporters. And, you know, you can slice it a lot of ways, but that's the reality.
Well, I live in New York, so
horrible.
I'm not psyched about this because it's going to mean taxes are going up. But then I say, okay, let me step aside from the fact that I live in New York and think about it if I lived in Texas or Florida or New Hampshire where there's zero income tax. Places like that, you say, how is it fair that the New York state or California or any of these places that have very high taxes basically allow those people to deduct that from what they're paying federally? Because it's effectively like Texas and Florida or New Hampshire are subsidizing New York.
Exactly. States that are generally profligate to the eyes of the rest of the country in terms of spending on their public employee programs, et cetera. I mean, again, if you look at the states that are going to be really hurt by this, California, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Massachusetts, all these states that have very high income taxes, state and property taxes, too, because they have overspent their budgets. Now, the flip side, as Adam, I think, was referring to, or someone was mentioning, is that New York will claim that they send a lot more to D.C. in terms of tax revenues than other states
they do. But so here's Wall Street Journal's economics editor and Fox contributor Jon Hilsenrath is joining us as well. And John, New York does send a lot more, but I'm going to wonder if New York politicians and California's politicians and other high state tax areas can't actually drive those rates down, might you see an exodus of people saying, okay, I don't need to live in this very high tax state because I got to pay 35% for federal income taxes and another 9 and another 4 in New York and a similar situation out there in a place like San Francisco. So you might actually start to see behavioral changes, which will mean other states will contribute more to the federal coffers. John.
I think you might see that, say, from retirees. I don't think you're going to see it from younger people because the states we're talking about are the homes to cities like New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, which are really thriving right now and where we're seeing a lot of tech jobs, a lot of finance jobs growing. You know, part of the problem in this economy right now is that it isn't growing in rural areas and ex-urban areas. It's really thriving in big cities like New York and San Francisco, and I think it's going to be tough to drive people out of those places.
Let me turn to this. You know, you've got, as you heard Chuck Schumer earlier saying, this is basically just going to help those that, already have something. You have those talking points that the left is ready to go with, and we've got some examples that Howie Kurtz is going to share with you momentarily from the media where they're all talking about how this is just going to help the rich. Liz, what do you say to that?
Well, the whole genesis of this tax reform effort was to create jobs. No one's talking about that. Heaven knows Chuck Schumer's not going to talk about that. But the idea is make U.S. companies more competitive, make them want to invest and expand in the United States through lower corporate tax rates, and also for small businesses, make it more appealing for them to invest and hire, create jobs. The ultimate answer to middle-class income stagnation, obviously, is more job growth. And that is what this is all about. No one on the left is going to talk about that. That's what it's for.
More job growth, which should translate into better wage growth.
About this?
Sure.
Can I say something about the critique that the Democrats have, that this is, just benefiting the wealthy? It's kind of like they're pressing the button that they pressed in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and just hoping it'll replay. Frankly, if the Democrats want to critique President Trump and the Republicans on this, I think there's a different one which might be more effective, which is the President and Republicans are promising more economic growth out of these tax cuts. And it is not a certainty, and it isn't even obvious that cutting taxes like this are going to create the 3%, 4%, 5% growth that they're promising. That's where I think Republicans need to be held accountable. This idea that they're just trying to help the wealthy.
I disagree with that. Well, I explained to everyone yesterday. I mean, look at JFK. He cut tax. 91% was the top income tax rate back when JFK came into office. This is why I say it doesn't need to be political. Democrat cut taxes. And then, 30 points.
Went down to the 70s then.
Better than 91, thank you very much. And John, the other point is that Reagan did the same thing, and it wound up, we saw some very nice growth, an average of 4% annually after those tax cuts. So 4%, hey, I'll take it, versus 1% to 2%, Liz.
And I would argue it's already happening. Day of the election, business optimism began to soar. Business investment is now beginning to chug along. And that was the missing economic wheel for the last 8 years. So
thank you very much.
I think it's happening.
I hope so. Liz and John, thank you very much.